I'm Laura Brody, and I've been a costume maker and designer for over 30 years now. I am a really big believer in repair and reuse. And today I'm going to show you some really good basic men's on a pair of faded jeans. Very worn out, I should say. My husband is pretty aggressive at wearing out his jeans, so I always have good ones to sample on. This one has some excellent patches, fabulous kitties, but the hems could really use a little bit of love. On this leg, I've already preset up a batch. So I actually used a piece from another pair of pants. These ones, in fact, used to actually be fully jeans. Now they're just short shorts and probably just going to be fabric. But it's a much thinner fabric than the existing jeans, so I actually used 2 layers of it, made it twice as big as I needed, and folded in half. I then put it inside of the pair of pants, pinned it down, and then did a really big stitch, what we call a basting stitch. Those are stitches that are just kind of large but meant to hold something in place. They'll eventually get pulled out. So you don't knot them, they're not finished in any way. I also started that on the other side to stabilize this area over here where everything has been kind of shredded. So once you've done that prep work, you can go in and remend this. You can do this by hand, you can do this by machine. There are a bunch of different ways you can go about it. But this is called patching it from the back and letting some of the fraying be visible. That's always an option. Anytime you're going to be doing a mending, you get to decide whether you want to do a more visible repair or an invisible repair. So do you want it to look like it's always looked that way? Do you want it to look brand new, or do you want it to look specifically like a patch? So for the other one, I'm going to do something that's a little bit more cleanly visible, but covering the hole. So I'm going to take this hole here, this big shredded out part, and I'm going to cover it with this other piece of fabric, taking the piece from the old pair of jeans and going just above the hole, maybe about a ½ inch above, folding down the one edge so that they don't have any more frayed edges, and then pinning it down. I'm going from underneath so I don't accidentally pin the front to the back. That happens sometimes. It's annoying and makes it a lot harder to wear. So we're going to try not to do that. Pin it all the way across. I'm going to do this as a simple rectangle, which will be nice. It'll cover up the big hole. That is the flat area. First you do the top, then I'm going to go around and do the sides. I might just trim out this big kind of lumpy bit. We'll see. I'll see how it ends up working. So I'm folding under the edge just like I did at the top. Folding it out just to the side of the seam. Pinning that down too. Pinning that down too. Pinning that down too. You're getting it covering the edge. If for whatever reason that looks like maybe that's not quite smooth enough, I'll go in and smooth it back out and repin until I am smooth again. Just like that. Then once we have done the one side, we go to the second side. So once again, I am folding under the edges just to one side of the seam and pinning this down. Just like that. My plan is to go in and fold it up in the back on the inside. But you could stitch the top portion, then fold all of this up. Doesn't really matter. That is up to you. For the sake of this one, I'm going to prep it all over to this side. So the sequence is top edge, sides from the outside, sides from the inside. Then we are going to go and fold the entire top edge underneath. Pinning as we go. Sometimes the easiest way to do this is to sort of pull the pant leg a little bit more inside out, and that way I can get a smoother, flatter edge. And then again, I am folding under that one edge. I'm alternating the pins underneath from the pins on the outside, just so you don't have them all stuck together with one big lump. That can be really not so fun when you're trying to sew it. Then I will go back and forth and making sure that the edges are as smooth as possible and repinning where I need to, because at this stage everything is very flexible. The one nice thing about doing any of these repairs or pinning or sewing is you can always take it out. It's not a big deal. If something doesn't quite fit or doesn't quite work, no big deal. Unpin it. Even if you've stitched it, you can always unstitch it and do it again. That might get frustrating, but it's completely repairable. So once I've pinned it all, I'm going to turn it right back around. And I'm going to do the basting stitching. So what I am using for this is a pre-waxed, pre-cutting of thread. This particular brand is called Silamide, which is nice to work with and tends to not knot up or tangle as easily when you're sewing. But you don't have to do that. You can totally use regular, plain old sewing machine thread. That'll work fine. A basting stitch is just a big stitch, or relatively. You don't knot the thread at the ends because you're trying to pull it out later. This means I can take the pins out. Pins are really handy, but they're pokey and they can get in the way. And sometimes doing this by hand and holding it together, it just makes life a whole lot nicer, and I am less likely to stab myself while I'm sewing. I'm pretty used to that. I stab myself all the time. But if you are not as used to poking yourself in the hands, it's not always so fun and it can be messy. So avoid that. If you baste things first, you don't have to worry about it as much. I may or may not leave the sides unbasted. It depends on how well they're holding in. If they're holding in pretty well by themselves, I'll just leave it. It is an extra step, absolutely, but that's not a problem. It's a pretty easy one. As I'm sewing, I'm pulling out the pins. I like these ones, these pins with a round head, just because I can see them very clearly. Use whatever pins you like. There are ones with little flowers on them. Sure, that'll be fun. There are straight flat ones with little tiny head pins. If you like those, use those. Whatever you like. Frankly, whatever you have around is one of the best things. You just prefer it to be a fairly thin one, especially if you're working on thinner fabric, because the bigger the pin, the bigger the hole it leaves. So it should have, a reasonable point to it, preferably be not too bent. This one's a little bit, but it's okay. You can always unbend them, mostly. If they get really bad, get rid of them. It's totally okay. I have an entire jar full of used sharps, which is all my old pins, razor blades, and needles. things that broke, things that bent too much. I put them in a jar, I put the lid on them. That way they don't get loose and do any harm to anyone in the landfill. Because unfortunately, pins don't recycle. I don't know why. I think you should be able to. Set all the pins free. And this is just about ready to mend. What I do for the final stitch is probably take it to the sewing machine, but you can also do this by hand. I just suggest smaller stitches, ones that you're less likely to catch your finger on or to catch against the edge of whatever it is you're walking near. And then you have this hem prepped to sew. Thanks for sewing with me.